CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Some of you might know him. He's been around this game of CMMS and technology. He is a renowned sales trainer. We're talking about the Sterling Method. He's an author. You can see his book. We're going to talk about that in a few seconds. And he's also a musician. We're going to tie it all together right now. Let's jump into the journey story. John Sterling of Sterling Ventures and Foxfire Software. Welcome to CMMS Radio.
Hey, thank you. Good to be back. It's good to be back in the CMMS world. It's wonderful, Greg. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's, for those that know you, they probably understand you have a long history and a deep understanding of the space, the clients, the technology, the war stories about what it's like to go to market and really deliver value while also trying to make sure you get somewhere as an organization. Businesses are here to make money, but we want to do that in a good, productive, useful way. So first question, how did that all start? And I'm talking about specifically your journey into entrepreneurship. I think you've launched at least 10 different companies since you became an entrepreneur. Tell us about that.
That's true. Well, for some reason, I had an interest in the entrepreneurial world from a young age, and did some stuff in high school. We did some small businesses and delivered newspapers and did the lawn care service, and just kind of liked the idea, the gamification of business. And as soon as I got out of college, I went to Silicon Valley, which at the time, you could probably tell by my gray hair, at the time I was about 24 or 22, and I went to Silicon Valley to learn kind of the business of technology. And after a few years out there working for some great little small companies you never heard of, I came back to where I'm from, which is South Carolina, and was looking for a little software company that I could either buy or buy a part of. And for all the people listening that are interested in entrepreneurism, that's one of the most important parts of the journey, is having that decision made early on. Most people don't just luck into it or just stumble across it. You literally have to say, I want to do this. How can I do this? And so I looked and looked, and I finally found a small software company. And I mean, 4 people in a little house, and they were doing, I think, $35,000 a month in sales, including services and everything else. And I knew the guy. It was kind of the best little software company I had found, and I asked him. Larry Blackwell was the owner and the CEO. I said, "How are sales going?" Because that's all I knew how to do was sell. And he said, "Well, that's our big problem is sales." And I said, "Well, which one of you guys is in charge of sales?" And he said, "Well, that's nobody. They do development, I do support, he does services." So really, it was just one of those things where they just hadn't gotten anyone to focus on it yet. And I said, that's what I know how to do. Let's work out a deal, but it has to be where I have a chance to buy part of the company. I don't want to just be a hired gun. And so, by the time I was 25, I was, the first salesperson in there at DataStream. And I had bought part of the company, and I eventually became the VP of sales. And, for 20 years, we built DataStream up to be, I'd say one of the leader in the world in maintenance software.
I remember those DataStream days, but from a different perspective, because I was part of a startup in the CMMS space. And, for us, we would look around at the different players and kind of understand, how can we learn from them and emulate, and at the same time find gaps, like maybe in the market or something like that. Because you know as well as I do and everybody else, it's a really big space out there. It's also incredibly crowded. We would often say back then,
Yeah,
saturated, right?
yeah,
Where
yeah,
how
yeah.
how does that fold into, like, when it comes to entrepreneurship and the challenges of launching or coming into an early startup like that?
Hmm.
What are some of the challenges you typically face, and not how did you overcome them, but which of those challenges are actually not as big of a deal as people make them?
Hmm. Interesting. Um, you know, the challenge we had when I joined was they weren't selling enough. We had a pretty good product. We, at that time, I guess it was the mid 80s, like 86, 87, 88, and business applications were just starting on the PC. And so any niche, any business niche you picked, right, was going to grow. We just happened to be in CMMS, but it could have been accounting or scheduling or whatever. So anyway, we were in a good niche, and our price was way too high. So
Mm,
we had priced it kind of like based on how hard it was to do it, and kind of a value price, and we kind of had a price based on how much value we were bringing, which is understandable, except for in a shadowy market, or a market with a lot of clouds in it. You just got to find out what people will pay, and you have to try to find a lot of, even if you're underpricing it, you have to get in the door, because over the next 5 or 10 or 20 years, those companies are going to grow, and they're going to buy each other, and they're going to spread. And we kind of we discounted our price from, like, let's say 50 grand to 5 grand. And all of a sudden, these people that were in our pipeline started to buy like crazy. So we started to get some good uh, sales in. Now, here's the weird thing. um, some of those people that we sold in that time period, those 3 or 4 or 5 years when we were starting up, they eventually became $1 million customers. Okay, we might have sold one little division of Chevron, like one little plant in one small city, and before you know it, all of Chevron's using it. Or we had one great example with Miami-Dade County, so one of the biggest counties in North America. One fire station bought our product. They bought, MP2
right.
for 10 grand or whatever it was. By the time it was all over, every unit owned by the county, the water, the wastewater, the airport, the police, the fire, completely used it. It turned out to be a $25 million project, and it's still ongoing.
Yeah.
So that's one piece of advice I would give people, is to find a way into these markets, even if it's low. And then once you're in the door, you have a completely different conversation than when you're outside knocking on the door.
Yeah. Yeah. This is interesting to me because I remember, and even to this day, I have all these kind of thoughts and ideas around pricing models and
Yeah,
how organizations themselves, big, small, in between, can get kind of stuck on how they do it.
yeah,
And then if you're saying, let's say I'm an account executive, or even if I'm, VP of sales, and I go to the CEO, like, in the past it was my partner, so it was a different kind of conversation, right? We
yeah,
could have a knockdown, drag out conversation about it.
yeah,
But in other environments can't really do that. But when you come to leadership and say, I've got some opportunities here that are not completely aligned with what we want price wise, but this is an opportunity for us to play the long game, because once
yeah,
this client gets in and they're thriving, we know we can solve their problem. We focused on that first. Now we did, in fact, encounter a budgetary issue. So we moved a little bit away from the value proposition and said, let's just help somebody now that we know it'll work. And then it can do everybody says, hey, land and expand. For me, it's like, I don't want to hear that term. I don't care about that.
hmm,
Help somebody and never lose sight of the real opportunity. So I'm always kind of screwing around in my head about these pricing models, like
right,
per user, because everybody does per user. And I want to implore companies to say to them, don't be like everybody else just because you think that's the way everybody wants it priced for their purchase experience.
Right.
Do something that caters to them. So what you did there is an important pivot. So I think that's a learning opportunity for anybody that's going to listen to this, and it's good stuff. So as that started and you're building and growing the company, and then of course, later on you're a serial entrepreneur. Does it, this is a really kind of weird question, but I think you'll get it. Does it get easier as you go through those new and next opportunities, or is that something people should be really careful with and understand that it's always hard, you just get better at it?
Well, definitely, I think it's always hard. One of the biggest things people should watch out for is if they're in a bigger company, or if they built a bigger company and then they leave that company, they sell it or whatever, and now they're back in, let's say, dealing with smaller numbers. Okay, it's very difficult. It's very difficult because what you're used to spending here, you're traveling around, going to see someone, all that kind of stuff. All of a sudden, you've got a different budget. $8,000 sale is a big deal. Where over here, you didn't even care about it. And so the adjustment is a difficult thing. Once it took me a couple of years really to adjust to being really an entrepreneur dealing with smaller numbers than we had at DataStream, but it does get easier because you have a relationship with a bank that you trust, a relationship with the CPA. You've got some people that you can call on to do custom programming or to help you get a deal done or something. So you start to develop this network of people you can lean on to get stuff done, versus when I was, let's say 22, I would say, I've got this great idea to start this business. And, my dad would say, well, explain to me how you're going to do that. I was like, well, I don't know. I guess I need a building. I don't know. I had no idea. So, it's everything. If you're a lifelong learner, it should get easier and easier, but there is a gap when you're going from big to little. You've got to be careful of, because the numbers change.
Do you think it also works the other way, whether you're actually part of the leadership team, equity stake or not? Let's say someone's coming in as maybe a somewhat seasoned account executive or something like that, and you go from small to big. Are there challenges there that they should be aware of? And then if so, how do they not overcome, but embrace those challenges? You know what I mean? Like going from a small startup to a big corporation.
I'll give you a great example. It's one of my favorite DataStream stories. But we were small. We were scrapping. We went 20 years of going out to lunch together every day, where everyone paid their own bill.
Yeah.
We never like, I'll get yours. No, we were scrappy the whole time. But after about 5 years, we had worked really hard to get the revenue up to, let's say, 5 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind, we ended up at 100 million, but we were at 5 million after 5 years. But Greg, it was hard work. We were making the calls and sweating and slugging, and it was just a lot of like digging with a shovel. And I saw an article, and I think it was in PC Week, back then, and this company called ACT was the first contact manager,
mm-hmm.
and they sold for, I think it was like $89 million. And we were like, oh my God, what? How did they do it? And so I looked them up, I called them up, and I ended up getting one of the owners named Dan Nichter, a wonderful guy. And I said, Dan, we got this tiny little company in South Carolina. We'd like you to tell us how you did that, because we'd like to do what you did. And he said, well, John, he goes, tell you what, I'm going to be in Atlanta in 2 weeks. Why don't you just come on down there and take me to lunch, and I'll tell you exactly how we did it. Can you believe that?
That's amazing.
It's amazing. So we go down there, and me and Larry took him to lunch, and he said, well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys how we did it real quick, then we can have a nice lunch. He goes, we hired this guy once a year named Al Reese, Ries, who is a big time like marketing and positioning business strategist. He's written 10 books. He consults for Microsoft and Mitsubishi and gives speeches all over the world. And he's always looking for new content. So he will do a 1 day review of your business for $10,000. Just he does that because if it's an interesting business, he'll do it, and he'll tell you exactly what to do. And that's what he does for us. Once a year, he comes in, looks at our business, and says, "This is what you ought to do."
Mm.
So, I mean, $10,000, Greg? Are you kidding me? But I'm like, Larry, why not? Why not? Let's try it. And sure enough, he came to Greenville. We flew down from New York, and Larry called him up that day and said, "What time do you get in?" And he said, "I get in around 5:30." And he goes, "Well, let me take you to supper." And Al said, "That will cost extra." I mean, so I mean, he was a serious man, but he came in, listened to our whole story, how sales going, marketing, competitors, the whole thing, and then he left. He didn't tell us anything, and then he sent us that night a 1 page write up, literally like 1 page that had like 6 or 7 things on it. But he told us again, $5 million a year, tons of competitors out there, as you pointed out. He said, the first thing you want to do is you want to claim to be the leader. Because nobody in your market has claimed to be the leader in maintenance software. He says, just claim it. And we were like, well, I'm not sure we're really the leader. And he goes, well, who cares? He goes, you're a leader in something, aren't you? I'm like, yeah, I guess so. Maybe we have the most customers. I don't know. And he's like, just claim it. Trust me. So, all right. He said, I want you to go public. We're like, go public? I went, what are you talking about? He goes, trust me. He goes, you're big enough. You can do an IPO. That will make you the leader because people will think they must be the leader. They're a public company. And then you use that stock that you've now created to go buy your competition, okay, your smaller competitors around the world, which will give you a global entity, and you will, in fact, be the leader. We're like, holy cow, what? And we're like, well, what else did he say? He said he wanted us to do a bunch of PR, which we didn't. We should have, but we were like, oh, whatever. There's a few other things, but those were the main things. And we literally just said, okay, we're just going to start on the first one. And does anybody know how to go public? No. Well, I've got a stockbroker. And so literally we started at that level. And we went through, we changed the business cards. We're the leader, the whole thing. And we did exactly what he said. We bought companies in Germany, in France, in England, in Argentina, China, Australia.
Do you remember when you guys were on that acquisition mode, that growth through acquisition mode? What year-ish?
It was, because we went public in 96. And so shortly thereafter, we started buying people with that stock. So it would have been like 97, 98, 99.
So I jumped into the world of CMMS in 2003, but I already was fully aware in 2002 while the solution was being built as our own solution. And so you guys were, you were the ones to watch.
Yeah.
So we would have known any different about when you were a little bit smaller because we were small and we were like, well, we've always thought it's good to learn from people that have been there and done that. And it helps you understand what you could do different to be different. But you talked about what this, like, I don't know, savant of a consultant did for you. Because people like that are literally savants. They boil it down, brass tacks, and all the complexity and calculations that go in behind it. They do that stuff in real time in their mind.
Yes.
And then they give you a plan. If someone had to follow that plan right away, I'm thinking, man, that's a lot of work. It's a distraction from the actual business. But it's preparation for and setting up for the long game to then a year from now, we're going to like a big catapult forward.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I wanted to ask about those distractions, because I can remember some of the times we were, you know, revising the business plan and talking to potential investors. And frankly, I always said, this is a complete time suck. We've never
Mhm.
wanted investors. This is a big distraction. I just lost 3.5 months of actual work and phone calls
Yeah,
I could have been making. Is that something that people might create a mental hurdle for themselves because they're they're, they're unable or too afraid to see that long-term vision?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that applies to our whole life. That when someone brings up like, you know, if someone says to me, John, I've got a plan for you to lose 30 pounds and get in the best shape of your life, I'm like, well, not right now. I'm waiting for my new shoes to come in. I can't do it right now. I mean, we can create these obstacles so quickly, and we said that in the meeting with Al. We said, listen, Al, I mean, going public and all, Larry said, we got a business to run, right? We got a business to run. And Al goes, well, it's up to you. Do you want to grow to 100 or not? I mean, you got to figure that out. And so it just means as a manager, you got to figure out how to manage the distraction and keep the business running. And so one of the things we did was we said, okay, it's only going to be three people. It's me and Larry and a guy named Michael Elliott, a very qualified guy. Said just those three are going to work on this secret project. And all we're going to do is we're going to take a long lunch every Wednesday. And at the lunch, we're going to talk about this list, who's got which number, how we're doing, and you cannot use this as an excuse to stop doing anything else you're doing. And so, some of them weren't that hard, some of them were. And then, once we went public, that's like, it changes everything, Greg, because all of a sudden you've got all this money, you've got cash, and you've got stock. You can hire people or hire contractors, and you can just start to make things happen.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
just it needs to be recognized that everyone is going to say no. Here's why we can't do it, and then as leadership has to figure out a way to do it anyway and do it kind of responsibly.
Yeah. So building on that, so I'm not even looking at any of my questions anymore, man,
All
because
right,
this is what happens for me every time we get into something that I think is just really important and it's
love it.
interesting. So now, when you're doing that and you've got to manage these growing teams, and then I assume, I think pretty safely, that you also think in a maintenance management kind of a mindset when it comes to what you do and who you serve. So
Hmm.
over here you're counting dollars, but out here you're solving problems, and the software is in the middle to actually achieve all that, right?
All right.
How do you manage, preserve, and enhance the culture of the organization? Because I think that's part of what you really do when we switch over into, mentorship and how you teach people to sell. So I'm going to have a follow-up question, but that's kind of a
Yeah.
question.
It's difficult. I mean, the culture of our company definitely changed when we started buying international companies. And the reason was we were very careful, particularly in the sales organization, to pick people. Like my model for salespeople was I wanted them to be local. Okay. I wanted them to go to a couple of schools like Wofford, Clemson, Furman, Citadel, be from the area, be former athletes. There were 6 or 7 different markers we looked for. And boy, it was almost like a fraternity. It was almost like a fraternity and a sorority together. It was just such a wonderful group. And we still, we sold the company, I think maybe 13 or so years ago. We still have a Christmas party. The company, all we do, we just get together and we have a party and everyone shows up, all the salespeople. So
Nice.
it's an amazing culture and people still help each other. Some of them got married, some of them started businesses together. Um, but it's difficult. And with the international people, what we did was once a quarter, we would bring all the leadership together somewhere, maybe somewhere overseas, maybe somewhere in America, and we would have like a 3-day kind of internet or just sales meeting basically. And you know, it's it's hard when those people weren't from around here.
Right.
They are different. But I tell you, we learned a lot from them. Some of those people were great salespeople, and like they would take me to their clients, and people like the Paris Metro was one of the clients I visited that uses our maintenance software. That's a long way from a small CMMS for one factory somewhere. I mean, the
Yeah.
Paris Metro was crazy. So yeah, it definitely changed things when we bought those companies.
The thing you talk about, like with the international colleagues, if you will,
Yeah,
you get some unique perspective because nothing's cookie cutter, but at the same time, the basic fundamentals and principles are essentially identical, but how they get applied, there's lots of nuance. And
yeah,
while you were talking about that, I was just thinking about it was like a sales training for a company I was working at before I jumped into the CMMS world.
yeah,
It was in e-commerce, sell
yeah.
side solution, big consortium, all this. And I remember being at that sales training. I was a business development manager, and I was also in charge of the aerospace and defense
Hmm.
portion, or vertical, if you will. And these guys from London came over, and I was fascinated. I was blown away about the slight differences, the way they articulate, how they explain things, how they run a whiteboard. Because this was back in those days. That was like in the year like 2000, early
Yeah,
2001, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
everybody's coming out of the. Do you remember like tornado marketing and crossing the chasm and
yeah,
this whole
yeah,
concept where, look, the 800-pound gorilla exists so that you can become one,
yeah,
or how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time. All that
yeah,
crap,
yeah.
and it was just fascinating to me. Do you think when you do the sales training, and real quick, so what we want to talk about is sales for noobs,
Yeah.
everything sales rookies need to know to crush quota, get promoted, and kick ass. I
That's
love
right.
that title because it says everything you need to know. But when building a sales team, you'd already kind of shared about it that you want to look for, you know, athletes and people that are accustomed to adopting and embracing a system and then leveraging their own personal performance for the benefit of the team. But is it sometimes that we would prefer noobs so that we can build them?
Oh, almost always. Almost always, unless you
Why?
have to get, well, for a lot of reasons. Here's one reason. If I'm putting my profile out there that I want someone who's tests a certain way on my psychological profile, they were a good athlete, they were a leader at college campus, um, they're from the area, they went to the school that I want them to go to, and let's say they know some people that I know that can vouch for them. So they just hit across the whole board. Now, I'll promise you that person, unless they get hit by a lightning or kicked by a mule in the head, they're going to be successful. All right. So if I let that person go and they go to work for, Verizon or whoever they're going to go to work for 5 years, I'll never get them. They're gone. They're gone, gone, gone. I can't get them. So once they're out of the barn, these great high performer people, they're gone. Because who's gonna let them go? Who's not going to be paying them just gobs of money because they're great? So your chance to get the best people is early, and you might even try to get them when they're sophomores or juniors, and make them interns, and then then you can hire them for normal wages because nobody knows how great they are except for you.
Yeah, I gotta say, the intern play, I've tried for years to literally tell everyone, you need help. You don't have the budget yet, but the help, that if you can get it, will
Yeah,
create the budget for the
yeah,
help.
yeah,
Go to your local colleges and find the ones that are hungry, and maybe even work with faculty in
yeah,
programs that are kind of related to what you're doing.
yep,
And you get to build them, and they're going to be really serious interns because it's attached to college credit.
right.
And now you're cultivating a career for them.
Yeah. So
And
if you use like the methods I'm talking about, or the ones that I teach in my program, and you pick, let's say, 5 of them. And you're like, this person, this is Greg, he's going to be great. And then you bring him as an intern and give him, 20 hours a week or whatever for a couple of months in the summer. You're going to know out of those 5 people what the rank is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 5 might be good, but it's not 1. So at the very least, you're going to say, I want to try to get 1 and 2 for sure. And so now going into the hiring season, you've got sure things on your hands. And what most people do, the biggest place I can help people is they don't take it seriously enough. They're so busy running their business, they're not taking the time to go find the great people to build their business around. And it just makes your life so much easier, when you have the right match for your job.
He's talking to you, Jerry. Sorry, had to do it. Because, look, man, I know pain.
Oh, Jerry Jones. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Run the football team. Don't be going on landman, dude.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
Just had to take my dig. Love those Cowboys, but, it's painful. These are fascinating insights that, anybody that hears this, there's something they could get. And I know I want them to reach out to you to see what more they can learn.
Yeah.
I wanted to switch over to, because we could go so deep on that subject. This would be a 4-hour podcast.
I know. I love talking about
it. We'll explore that in the future. I just wanted people to get a taste, but I want to switch over to Foxfire. And okay. Foxfire is warehouse management software. Also, you could say that as WMS. I want to understand how that started and why is it a better path forward than your typical ERP or the like?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. Let me just back up 1 second on the coaching stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I got into the coaching is as soon as we sold DataStream, which was 2006, I started getting all these requests to help people with their sales departments. And I was just really busy, but my wife was like, "Are any of these people paying you anything?" I'm like, "No, I haven't asked for any money, But anyway, so I started a consulting business called sterlingsales.co. And if any of your listeners want to go there, there's plenty of free stuff. There's hundreds or at least 100 podcasts on selling. And then there's services I offer, training or coaching your sales team, et cetera. So we can shut the door partially anyway on the coaching. To your question, after we sold the company, again, I like software. I like helping people, with their software, building sales teams to support that. And so I started looking for a software company to buy. A maintenance company would have been perfect, but I couldn't find one. I'm still looking right now for a maintenance software company to buy, CMMS company, whatever. Not the biggest one. I can't afford the very biggest one, but if there's one out there that's for sale, I'd love to talk to them. But I bought Foxfire thinking, well, it's similar to maintenance, right? It's a warehouse, it's business to business kind of thing. What we find is if somebody has, let's say, whatever their accounting system is, of course, you have to record, what inventory you have in your accounting package. And you have to record when you ship it out to a customer. So all that happens naturally. But if you don't have a WMS like we have, an active WMS that's connected to the accounting system, then your pickers, the people out there trying to get the stuff, they don't know where anything is. They have to run around and look for it, and that stuff's supposed to be here, it's not here. And, you end up, having a lot of lost items that cost the company money. You end up having short shipments and customers that are not so happy. So there's lots of reasons why a good WMS is important to bolt on to the accounting system. And that's what we found. We also thought, rightly so, that since we're in the backyard of ScanSource, which is the largest distributor of the handheld barcode scanners right here in Greenville, that we would partner with them and work through their VAR channel. And so that's what we do. So we work through the channel, the ScanSource channel that's already in the warehouses out there selling the scanners, and we just provide the software to them.
So that way, because we always heard this in the CMMS world is, I need a system that's going to do like, these 5 or 6 things.
Yeah.
It's one set of things for the frontline workforce. And then there's, you got to get the KPIs and the dashboards and all that for the C-suite and all that. But then invariably what's going to come up is, well, when my inventory comes in and I'm going to use the parts and supplies area or whatever you want to call that, right, within a CMMS, they need that functionality to be able to hit it with the gun and not have to screw around. So
Right.
yours has that right then and there. Plus, it's
Right.
already connected to whatever accounting system they have, so they don't have to worry about, oh, we're going to buy an ERP, and in this case, it's going to replace our accounting system, because that's a daunting undertaking. That's a
Right.
risky undertaking.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So we end up working with, probably 30 different accounting systems that just don't have the specialization of a WMS that customers want. And for the most part, I mean, the workers that are out there actually working in the warehouse, none of them ever use the computer. They just use that handheld. So it's been a nice business. And then I think maybe since you and I talked, I bought another software company called voltrack.com. And Voltrack is a volunteer management system. So if you have a nonprofit, let's say, or a hospital that has lots of volunteers, you need to track things like, what time do they prefer to work? What are they skilled to do? What's the rating on them? Have they been background checked? All that kind of stuff. And so I've started kind of a little holding company of software group, which I get to apply my my sales coaching to, and I'm actually specifically looking for a maintenance software company now to add to that this year. So it's only January,
I've talked to a few. You and I have talked about that at least once or twice, and
right.
Seeing what's going on out there. So we're one of these days, some kind of way, we're going to find you one so that
Let's
you
do
can, do it all again. And I love that because, I know when we sold, ours wasn't right off into the sunset money, right?
Yeah.
And there's a void that gets created. And, I one time, I've done a few episodes with Paul LaChance, who you happen to know and know well.
Yeah.
Awesome individual on every possible level, understands it. He's had his own successful exit. But when that happens, a lot of entrepreneurs don't have a post-exit plan, and it creates a void.
Yeah.
And that's always a challenge. But I love that you're looking at and continuing to embrace or keep these software opportunities to grow these companies, because it's pretty easy to get passionate about when you know that it works, and that at the end of the day, the money you're generating because of the value you're offering, you can sleep at night. You don't have to, you're not a charlatan, and you're trying to actually solve these real problems, whether it's in a warehouse. I didn't know about Voltrack, so I'm going to look into that. I love that, because nonprofits are some of my favorite things, businesses, people on the
Well, I'll
planet.
tell you one thing, they're good customers. Well, they've been the friendliest customers. They're the nicest people because they're kind of into volunteering,
Yeah.
So they're just like, they're just so friendly. Well, here I'll tell you a quick story about that.
Yeah.
Not that I'm complaining, but after we sold, they kind of kicked us all out the next day, and they hadn't told us they were going to do that. We thought we were all going to work for 2 years or whatever, and I don't blame them, and I'm not mad at them. They did a great job with the business. It was their right to do, but the point is, I was completely surprised. So I couldn't have left there in a million years, Greg. I was so committed to those people. All of a sudden, it's like, don't go to the office. Like, just go home. So for a minute there, I was really excited. I was like, well, I think I'll just go tomorrow. Maybe I'll go hit some balls around 10 o'clock, and then maybe have lunch, and then maybe I'll take a nap, I mean, it was pitiful. It was so pitiful. And my wife, she starts to get wind of this, and she's like, do you have time this afternoon maybe to run by the grocery store and pick up a few things? And I was like, well, yeah, I guess I do. I mean, so anyway, I started to turn into just a bowl of goo. And it lasted about, I'd say, 6 or 8 weeks. And I finally said, stop, enough's enough. You've got to go find something else to do. And that's really when I started doing the consulting, and I started the the search for a software company where I eventually found Foxfire.
Yeah. No, that's an important thing, that people have to be willing to do that one thing you just said. Stop. I
Yeah,
need to get back to work on
yeah,
something. It's
something.
not that you don't want to do the groceries and all that, but you want to have that. You've got fire that needs fuel.
Yes,
You don't want
yes,
that flame going out, and it's at risk constantly.
it is.
So you got
It
to
is.
stay in action, and it's not busy just to be busy. You gotta fire up that passion, because it'll get put out.
Right.
It'll get put
Right.
out. How I already asked you about this. This is kind of a weird one. I think I was trying to remember something we talked about once. So my question is, how does jazz and music connect to all of this in some kind of way
Hmm.
for you?
Yeah, for me. Well, I do. I love to play jazz music on the saxophone. I've
Mhm.
always loved the sound of it, and so I listen to it a lot. Just something about it just drew me to it. And then when I turned right around 30, I decided I was going to actually play, and so that's when I started. So I've been playing for a while now. I think playing an instrument. One thing it does is it creates some confidence within you that you can do things. And so, if you're able to, work for years and years and get pretty good and get where people hire you and they say this sounds good and all, you think, well, if I can do this, then I can do that. And so I think, it's one of the reasons it's important in school is kids start to, learn how to do something and get confident that they can achieve something else. So I think that's part of it. And then there's this actually happened, Greg. I think you might appreciate this, even though it's a little off color. I took my wife and my daughter to kind of it's like a 3-day weekend about extreme health, just extreme health. Out in California, it was a Navy SEAL and some other people that did all these special things about health. And after 3 days of listening, I was kind of sitting toward the back of the room with my wife and my daughter, and the head of the camp gets up there. I said, "Hey, before you finish up," I said, "there's been so much information. Can you just give me just a couple of things I can take home with me that I should do to to be healthier?" And he goes, all right, sir." There's 100 people in the room. He said, "I think you should play an instrument, and you should have more sex, and you should smoke a little weed." I looked at my wife and I said, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that?" So I think that the music part of that, I won't speak to the other two, but the music part of that does something to your brain that just opens up pathways. And it makes it more likely that when you run into a business problem, you can find an more interesting solution than if you were just, right down the middle.
Yeah. It's it's something to ponder and consider for everyone out there, and I appreciate that story, every bit of it,
Yeah.
because an overarching theme in the lives of everyone. Some people are doing better, some people are doing worse, somewhere in between, and we want to accomplish things. There really does seem to be something to this concept of learning and challenging oneself constantly. And this is certainly going to happen when we talk about music, and even skilled veteran musicians, right?
Yeah.
Even the big ones that we all could, name them, they don't stop doing that. They don't just show up today and go, "I'm going to play, and I'm going to play something I used to play." They're
Right.
invariably experimenting and challenging and looking for
Yes.
new frontiers, even if nobody ever hears it, because
Yeah.
something's happening in their mind and in their soul, and whatever you believe in out there. I mean,
Yeah.
I can soapbox like nobody's business, but it's what I'm saying, John, is it's good stuff and it's viable. And I wanted that question to lead you into what I call the fun question segment on CMMS Radio. And the
Yeah.
first question is always, what is your favorite music? But in your case, I want to ask, what is your favorite music other than jazz?
Hmm. I would have to go with just traditional rock and roll, AC/DC, Skinnerd, some of that kind of stuff that just puts me in a good mood. When I'm trying to concentrate on something, believe it or not, Skinner's greatest hits is the thing that my mind starts to loop on. If I'm listening to that, I kind of get into a groove. So Skinner, that era of music, AC/DC, I just love.
Yeah. Yeah. I got a best friend that's all about ACDC. He's trying to target the concert that they're going to have. I think it's out in Tennessee sometime this year. So that's cool. Next fun question is, what is your favorite sport or hobby? And on the hobby, you can't do saxophone.
Okay. Okay. Sport. um, I have evolved through basketball, which was my favorite, for a long time.
You were a professional in Ireland, right?
I played a little bit in Europe, and then I got into tennis. And actually, my height, the best tennis I ever got into was my father was a very good player, better than I was, but he's obviously older. And we started playing the national father son circuit. So with the father and the son would play each other, and so we got to the point where we were in the top 10 in the country at one point. So that was really, really fun. And what more fun way to have fun with your dad, than to compete. So that was a great sport. Now I'm really more about longevity. I don't really have anything I do. It's like a competition. I go to an exercise routine called Orange Theory, which is it's one of those that rotates you around between rowing and running and walking and lifting and just kind of get a general bit of exercise. So that's what I do on the athletic front at the moment. Hobby. I mean, I think the hobby in me right now, it's kind of a business, it's kind of a hobby, but I've got a menu item on my sterlingsales.co website called Pathfinder. And it's kind of like the Great Oz, remember the Great Oz was, I am the Great Oz. And
yeah.
So it's kind of like, I'm telling the guy who's helping me, I want to be the Great Oz. And so, so anyone can go to it. It's free. And I've made it with GTP. I've loaded in my book. I've loaded in all my podcasts, all my videos, any content, any articles I've ever done are in there. And you can go in there and ask it any sales question. How to get a big deal, how to prospect, how to get a first job. It'll interview back and forth. And the cool thing is, Greg, you're not typing. You're talking. I'm talking. So you're talking to me. Yeah, so we're talking. It's unbelievable how good it is. I mean, if I'm good, it's good because it's pretty much like you're just talking to me. So right now, it's still in a hobby phase. I'm giving it away. I'm trying to get people interested, but it's probably the most fun thing I'm doing. I've got one guy helping me. I give him a set number of hours per week, and we meet every Saturday to kind of do the revision of where we are. But it's called Sales Pathfinder, or maybe it's called Sales GPT, but it's on the menu.
Yeah, I'll check it out, and I'll make sure we get that in the episode because not only does that sound cool and certainly fun, but it's useful. And one of the funnest things for me, and I really can't even imagine how fun it is for you, is when you see the lights go on when you're trying to explain or get someone to adopt a concept and take it into a more tangible space within themselves. Yeah. Terms, concepts, approaches. I'm talking about mentorship. And I think for you, not only a natural mentor, but you've been on both sides of it, and I think you really thrive in that, which might explain why that's such a fun and kind of rewarding little hobby that will eventually become more than just a hobby. But you're trying to get it right, but you're having fun with it. And I think too often people can lose sight of the fun, thinking that I'm having too much fun. This isn't really very productive. And that is kind of nonsense because human beings need a little bit of playtime, and that can actually foster and fuel that play thing to become an actual game changer for people. So that's pretty cool stuff. I want to check that out and see how it works, because being able to talk to it and interact,
Yeah.
as
Well,
that.
please do, and tell me what you think of it. I'd love to hear your improvement ideas.
Well, and so anybody that checks this episode out, when you figure out, and I put in here how to get to that thing, or you look in the underneath the YouTube video or whatever, go in there, play with that thing, engage with that thing, see what you can learn, and get John some feedback so that he can make it better and better. Because he's not just putting it out there and being one and done about it. He wants to see it kind of work and make a difference. So that's cool stuff. Here's the big fun question. This is the big one. There's no wrong answers on any of this stuff. None. It's here to make us think critically, whatever. What is your philosophy, perspective, approach, anything at all on the concept of work-life balance?
Well, where I am right now, at my point of life, there's no difference. Everything I'm doing is a part of life, part of my life. It's a chosen part of my life. Like, I'm doing this because I choose to. I've got several businesses because I choose to. And this little project I told you about, the saxophone, some of them make money, some of them cost money. I mean, but it's all part of life. And I think what I learned after we sold DataStream, DataStream to me was like a 10-hour a day kind of job at least, and then it was zero, and I had nothing to do. And so now, I've got 7 or 8 projects going on, and I might have 9 tomorrow, maybe have 7, but there's always something. So I think that you ought to strive for a life where you're doing what you choose to do, even if it's hard sometimes, but you're choosing to do it. Now, I'll go back to when I was much younger. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do. You have to say, well, I need to make this much money, to pay the damn rent. And so you do what you have to do until you can afford to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my philosophy on it.
It's good stuff, because whether it resonates with anyone or not, it gets people thinking. And that's all I'm trying to do here. Right. I like to have these fun, real, unscripted conversations, go on a journey, get a little piece of your journey story. Yeah. I'm really glad we finally got to do this, man. We've been working on it. We kept pushing it out. And we finally got it done, and we're going to do it again.
I'd love to.
Yeah, I think it's good stuff. So folks, grab a copy of Sales for Noobs, everything sales rookies need to know to crush quota, get promoted, and kick ass. I love to say shit like that because it's real. And you can connect with John Sterling on LinkedIn. You can also visit www.foxfiresoftware.com.
Yes.
And if you need powerful warehouse management software that is not an ERP and it has a personal touch, that's where you want to go. We're also going to put some links into, maybe Sterling Ventures. And hey, anybody out there, if you've got a CMMS company and, maybe you're early in the game, you're partially monetized, maybe you're fully monetized. If you don't get a hold of John, get a hold of me. We can talk about it. I'll get you guys talking together, and maybe I can coach you up on what that's like. But John's here to do good stuff. He's been part of a lot of cool things. He's known in the industry. One last thing, John.
Yeah.
What is the DataStream Mafia?
Well, the recruiting we were telling you about, that we recruited, let's say over 100 salespeople that were local, from the area, from the local colleges. Those people are now, 40, 50 years old. And one of our ideas in recruiting people local was, we might find someone in Oklahoma City who's a very good potential salesperson, but the thought process is they're probably going to leave the area. So we want to get people that are going to stay here to build this culture, this company. So the Mafia are those people that came in out of school and worked their way up and did well and became regional managers and VPs and whatever, and they just stayed with the company for 15 years or so. And now they're all out in Greenville. They're starting companies, hiring each other, So if you want to get something done in Greenville in the tech scene, you just call one of your buddies in this group, and we have a special little group where you can contact everyone. So that it's not the PayPal mafia, but it's the Southern version.
There you go. There you go. And a lot of amazing things come out of the South. So I love it. I love it. John, thanks for being here with me on CMMS Radio. This was awesome.
Thank you, my friend.
You got it. Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.